This video actually came from a comment I saw on my very first video. It's up on screen, but the part I want to focus on are, I think this is also why Dream and Schlatt seem to be written as obvious villains, since they are the only ones that don't stream the Dream SMP. I want to thank this comment and this person, Lucanio, for the comment, as it actually gave me a lot of food for thought and a lot of things for me to think about, as I really wanted to do a video on this kind of concept. Anyways, before I start the video, I'd like to thank everyone for all the support, and since it takes a lot of work and effort to make these videos, I hope you can like, subscribe, and come follow me on Twitch. Thank you, and let's get into the video. The meaning of antagonist is a person who actively opposes or is hostile to someone or something. An adversary. The Dream SMP has antagonists, like most stories. The antagonists on the SMP, however, are unique due to the one compelling fact that binds them all together. The fact that each and every one of them doesn't stream. The three antagonists I found, the three main antagonists that I have managed to find for each season or each part of the Dream SMP, doesn't stream. So we're going to look into this, and we're going to look into how these antagonists have affected the server and how they've themselves have been unique pulling points and points to change the SMP. Alright, let's get into our first one, the egg. The egg is the most villainous antagonist on the Dream SMP, and the reason for this is quite simple. It is a quote-unquote monster villain. These appear in TV shows and movies and have existed since the dawn of time because it's very easy to vilify and hate on monsters because they aren't human. They aren't humanoid. You feel less pity, less compassion for them because you can't relate entirely. Even when you have a human villain and they're quite evil, you can still feel a bit of pity for them if they can show that in a way. Of course, there are human villains who are much worse than any monster villain, and you feel more pity for the monsters, but it's a naturally inbuilt thing into humans that if it's a monster villain, you're just going to feel a bit less pity. Not much less, and it can very much change. However, the egg hasn't given us any reason to feel compassion for it. Everything it's done has seemed to be for the reason of taking over the world or taking over the server, corrupting people, making them sacrifice each other and slowly wanting to devour, and as we see in the Tales of the SMP stream, it's been doing this for eons. First using Cerbilium to sacrifice poor people to it, and now is trying to make a comeback again through the medium of Bad and Antfrost and even Skeppy. The egg is just a villain. It's just like a massive monster rising out of the water that wants to destroy humanity. When we finally lay the final blow to it, no one's gonna cry. Maybe Bad Boy and Halo and Antfrost will be freed and will be like, woo, that's great. But no one is gonna go like, damn, that egg did some good things for me and now it's gone. So that's really a simple villain. It's nothing compared to the complexity of the others, and it's just kind of a contrast to the other characters on this list. Now, the second person on this list, Dream, isn't a character who can be downright defined as, oh, it's a villainous villain. Dream is the human villain. It's a person with a motivation or a goal who does anything in his power to get it, and at some point you realize that, oh, they aren't just doing what they want, they are throwing everything out the window, pushing everyone out to make sure they reach their goal. And they're doing it in an inhuman way. There are millions of these movies, and even though Dream doesn't want to wipe out people, he still wants to do anything in his power to control them. So this is why Dream is a bit more of an antagonistic villain than everyone else on the server. What he does, it feels morally wrong. The way he manipulated people like Ranboo and Tommy feels so bad that it's hard to defend him and look at him in some way as a good guy, especially after the Tommy and Tubbo versus Dream fight, because of all the things he's done to try and control people. all the things he had, the fact that he was planning on imprisoning Skeppy just to control Bad Boy Halo. Of course, he's currently defeated and in the prison, but if he escapes again, who knows what he's going to try and do, considering the absolute amount of power he had. Dream is a character who I made an entire video on, so I'm not going to go too deep into this. But as an antagonist, it's hard to defend him. You can like him for sure, but it's really hard to defend his actions due to how far out they go and how little of sense that his goal has. If you want to control people utterly, that's not going to happen. But if he toned it down a bit and just wanted to keep the peace or keep the calm, suddenly everyone would be on his side. And because that's what we all want. But instead he took it a step too far and it became way too big. And now there's no way that he can be redeemable or whatever, like look at him in the same way ever again. And now comes the person that I made an entire video for, Jschlatt. Now, Jschlatt I can't cover in one video because there isn't enough to cover about him. Mainly due to the fact that he hasn't been on the that he wasn't on the server long enough, and that he doesn't stream, which means that I can't get more content from him, which is pretty sad. But I really did want to cover Jschlatt in the character analysis way, so I'm going to do it here. Jschlatt, as a character, is one of the best on the server. During the short period of time he was on the server, he went from a guy who successfully won an election from just joining the server randomly to a drunken, protein powdered, addicted mess who had been betrayed by literally everyone around him. His story is so sad if you look at it from the different perspective. Let's look at the two ways we can look at the Jschlatt drama, or at the Jschlatt's journey. The first way is from the perspective of Wilbur Soot and Tommy Innit. What they see is a man who they thought they would support him, betray them, and suddenly run against them. He then barely beats them in a quote-unquote unfair way by teaming up with Quackity, and then exiles the creator of the country and his right-hand man from it. It looks terrible. It looks like Jschlatt is just taking over, is just doing this terrible thing by taking over. He takes down the walls of L'Manberg. He forces people like Fundy to take them down. He taxes Nikki. He burns down the flag. He starts to take down old memorial stuff. He tries to kill Tubbo. He does so many bad things. He gets on bad terms with Quackity, and then Quackity leaves him. And finally, in the end, he's just left, and he's a broken man now because he's been so bad that everyone left him. And then you look at it from the side of Jschlatt. Jschlatt logs on the server to work with Tommy and Wilbur, but then realizing that they tried to do an unfair democracy, decides not to and run by himself. In a completely legal and fair way, he decides to team up with Quackity so that both of them can both get into power and take out the two tyrants who were trying to undemocratically keep a hold of the nation. They win through democracy. Then, to get rid of the tyrant, to exile the man who was trying to betray democracy, he exiles him and his right-hand man who supported him and was actually the one who gave the idea. Then he decides to tear down the walls that were surrounding the country because they were limiting them. And he wants to be able to be free, and he wants it to be less of a cage or less anti-everyone else and less anti-American. He brings back the law that weapons are allowed because he thinks the people in the country should be allowed to defend themselves, and just starts allowing people back in. He changes the flag to signify a new ruler or a new leadership, and taxes Nikki because she's a traitor and she's actively working with the former tyrant. Then of course comes the festival, which in itself is such a great thing. Remember, Wilbur and Tommy wanted to blow up what was actually a pretty fun festival for everyone else. He then announces a public execution of Tubbo, which is the only really hard to defend part of the entire thing, is when he asks Techno to kill Tubbo. And then he's still trying to keep this country together or do well. But people are just leaving him. They're betraying him. Fundy leaves him. Quackity leaves him. And in the end, he's just left completely broken. He tried his best to fix this country up. He tried his best to get rid of the memory of the tyrants that had been there before. But in the end, everyone chooses the tyranny over him. Of course, these are two very different ways to look at it. But since Schlatt doesn't stream, you don't normally see the second side of him. You normally see the tyrannic ruler who drove a country into the ground and had to be taken out due to what he had become. This is what the animatics will show you. This is what the Jschlatt himself will show you from everything else he's done. But if you look closer at his actions and you just change your perspective a bit, it changes quite a bit. Now, I'm not going to say these are the only quote-unquote antagonists on the server. There will never just be these antagonists, and there will always be more. But it's just to point out that while Dream and the Egg are quite villainous antagonists, there is still a semblance of good to them. The Egg could just be wanting to eat, or needs to survive through feasting, and this is how it gets its food. Dream could just be trying to grab back at the control over the land he once had, and that he's seeing it spiral out of control and turn people against each other and destroy the land, and he just wants to try and make everything feel good again. And Jschlatt was just trying to fix a country he thought was broken. In the end, it's all a matter of perspective. It's the reason why propaganda works so well. If you can change people's perspectives on issues, suddenly you're no longer the big bad. The way in which you see an issue or a person will very much differ depending on where you're seeing it from. A quick thing before I wrap up the video. I was originally going to include Technoblade in this list of antagonists, but I didn't because he is only a real antagonist to L'Manberg and to other governments, and I just didn't feel like, especially with him going to be against the Egg, I didn't feel able, or I didn't seem like it fit to put him as an antagonist. But I very much did consider him, and he does do some pretty bad stuff. I'm not going to say that he does not do it without reason, because all the antagonists do. But let's just say that in the end I decided against it, and decided that he's much more of a chaotic, neutral character than anything. Anyways, this has just been a shorter video while I have exams up, and while the two characters I want to do an actual analysis on, Tommy and Rambo, are in the middle of an arc. I promise the video on them will come as soon as they are in a good position to do a video on, not while they're both in the middle of something. Thank you all for watching as well. Thank you all for supporting the channel. The amount of support has been huge. If you want to watch another video, there should be one on the screen. Please like and subscribe. Check out the Discord, and come check out my Twitch. I swear I make good Twitch streams. Please, I need company. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.